So I've had the pleasure of shooting with the Sony A7 III now for the last week and a couple days. And as a Canon shooter, it was very unique to completely immerse myself into this camera. So in order to get the full aspects of what this camera can do, I basically packed my 1DX up, I put it away, and I told myself everything for the next weeks, including paid jobs, I was gonna shoot 100% on this camera. And so this is basically what I thought of this camera, and ultimately, is this the Sony camera that finally gets me to switch from Canon to Sony? What's good, creative fam? Brandon Washington here, and first of all, if you're brand new to the channel and you've never seen one of my videos before, thank you so much for checking out this one. My channel is all about filmmaking gear, tips, and tutorials, and so if you're into those things, definitely consider hitting that subscribe button because that's basically what this channel is all about. But in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the Sony A7 III. Now, this is a camera that has been getting widespread acclaim and people have been absolutely overly ranting and raving about it, and I'm not someone who is quickly bought into the hype, so I needed to get my hands on this camera, test it out, and really see if it was good. Now, when it comes to testing out cameras, a lot of people get their hands on cameras for 2 or 3 days, they make up their assumptions, and then they make a video about it. But with this camera, because I'm so intrigued and really was considering buying one, I wanted to get my hands on it for a week. And so I rented this camera, something that I preach a lot on this channel. I rented this camera for the week to see how well it could handle my day-to-day shooting situations. Now, basically, I'm gonna break this video down into 3 parts. We're gonna talk about what this camera is, the good things about it, the bad things about it, and I guess the 4th, and that is ultimately what my decision will be now that I know all this. So first of all, what is this camera? So Sony totes this as their basic model or their beginner model mirrorless camera, which in my opinion, it is everything but. This camera has amazing video. It shoots in 4K up to 24 frames per second in full frame. It also shoots 1080 at up to 120 frames per second. And this camera also takes stunning photography and photos with a mode called IAF, which basically allows it to track to someone's eye, which I can say immediately I was absolutely spoiled by this feature and wish this was something that we had in Canon. Now, before you Canon people get mad at me, I know there is something like IAF, but it does not work like this, and you know it. Ultimately, this camera is an amazing hybrid camera, perfect for those people who shoot video and photography and they need something that can handle both very well. Well, that's what this thing is, and it's all wrapped up in a $2,000 body. Now, with that said, let's go ahead and jump into what I call the pros or the amazing features that this camera offers. First, video. Now, when it comes to video on this thing, Sony did not hold back. I mean, it would be very easy for them to do what we find, companies like Canon do, where they hold back on a camera because they don't want to, put all their best features in a camera that they're selling at a low price point. Sony didn't do that. Not only did they make this camera amazing, but they actually made it better than a lot of their video focused cameras by giving it things like in-body stabilization, the ability to shoot 4K at multiple picture profiles, the ability to really customize this camera with different solutions to make video shooting easier, like peaking and zebras and things like that. This camera allows you to do basically everything that their higher end video cameras that they had last year, or their higher end mirrorless cameras that they had last year could do, and you can do all that and even more at a much cheaper price point. Now, although that Sony is toting this thing as a basic beginner model, it does have a lot of pro things. Like, for example, I know this part is very controversial on the internet right now, but it does come with dual SD slots, which as a Canon shooter and someone who shot like on the 1DX Mark II, I absolutely loved having this on there. And I know that like some people aren't really used to this or don't really see the point of it, but if you've ever been shooting like a live event, like I was shooting a concert a couple weeks ago, actually a couple nights ago, and I needed to have multiple cards because the event was going for so long. It is so nice to be able to have your video start on one card and just easily transition over to the second card. You know, this thing not only takes great video, but it also takes stellar photography. I mean, I know I mentioned it slightly already, but the IAF on this thing makes capturing focus so easy when taking photos. I found that all my images were very sharp, and with this electronic viewfinder on here, which I'm coming to absolutely love with mirrorless cameras, is that when you're taking a photo, you can see the exact exposure level that your photo is going to be at. So not only is your photo going to be properly exposed, but it's also going to be extremely sharp with that IAF. Now, although this camera has a lot of awesome benefits that I have absolutely been loving, including just the overall image quality that comes out of it, there are a couple things that I didn't like. And one of the big ones has to do with its autofocus in video. Now, when you're autofocusing this thing in video when shooting in 1080p, it works stellarly. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. I thought it was great when shooting video. However, when you're shooting video in 4K, well, it's not quite as good. So what happens is, or what I realized was that when you shoot in 1080, you can do what's called face tracking, or whatever, it tracks your face. And that really helps with pulling focus. It's something that the Canons have been doing for a long time, and it really makes a big difference, especially if you're filming yourself or you film people typically. But whenever you switch this camera over into 4K, it doesn't allow for face tracking anymore. Now it actually is doing a contrast type focus, and it's looking at depth. So for example, I actually shot a video for YouTube in my test with this, and I found that it kept switching back and forth between my face and my hands. And obviously in that situation, you know, for someone like myself who talks with their hands and they do a lot of this, you don't want the focus jumping around from your hand over to your face. And you could definitely tell it was 100% noticeable. People in the comments were letting me know about it, and I almost didn't post that video because it was so bad, but I wanted to put it out there so people could see, and so you guys could even see what happens if you shoot this camera in 4K, what that autofocus really does. Now, a couple other things that I thought this camera was absolutely missing. One, obviously something that a lot of people talk about with pretty much almost every camera other than Canon, is that this thing does not have a fully articulating screen. You know, this little flip out thing here came in handy every now and again. I definitely found myself using it, but realistically when shooting myself, it was basically imperative that I had a monitor. Now, because this thing is so small, attaching a small little monitor like the one I reviewed last week isn't that difficult, but I will say it would have been nice to be able to just have a screen on here that flips out. Now, another thing that this camera is missing is the ability to shoot time lapses internally. Now, I love shooting time lapses, and having a camera that shoots it internally is the best. I mean, the M50 from Canon has that in there, and I use it all the time with that camera. But I will say that all the cameras that I love most, like I love this camera and I love the 1DX Mark II, but neither one of them have a way to shoot time lapses internally, and that just bugs me, and I don't know why every camera doesn't have that built in. Now, for the first time with this camera, I found that those few little hiccups that I ran into were really the only issues I had with it. And normally with Sony cameras, there's like a list of things that I don't like and I have to fix and I have to deal with and figure out workarounds for it. But when you look at things like this camera's color science, you look at the way that you can customize the menu now. You can actually customize the buttons and have a whole menu page. So you basically never actually have to really look through the menus except when you're initially setting up your Sony. This camera really is the perfect camera to really switch from Canon to Sony with, because it is so easy, because it works so well, and because it does everything that you need a camera to do at a great price point. And they're calling this their entry level. This is honestly the perfect camera if you are a Canon shooter and you are thinking about making that switch. So now let's go ahead and jump into the last part, and that is, what am I gonna do now? This is not one of those videos where it's all about the lead up to, am I gonna switch? And then I say, I don't know. Oh, I absolutely know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna buy this camera. I love this camera. As a Canon shooter, this is the camera that is going to make me go over to Sony. Now, I'm not saying that I'm 100% leaving Canon, because I still love my 1DX Mark II, and I still love that Canon glass and that Canon color for certain situations. But I will say that this is a great additional camera. Now, I know that Canon just released the EOS R, and I have to say that I am not impressed with that camera whatsoever. And when it comes to mirrorless right now, this is the camera that I want to buy. Now, there are a couple little things I have to look into, like buying lenses and all the new accessories that have to go with switching over to Sony and using Sony. But I know a lot of you guys aren't going to be happy with that, but I have to say that when a good camera comes around at a great price that can do amazing things in this size, I mean, remember, I shoot with the 1DX Mark II. That thing is massive, but I can get some great stuff out of a camera this size. How can I pass this up? This is definitely the camera that I'm looking to purchase next. The only thing I will say that could possibly change my mind is maybe the Fuji X-T3, which I will be reviewing very, very soon. But as of right now, this is the next camera that I want to purchase, and I do see myself picking one up very soon. Now, someone else asked me the other day on Instagram, they were like, how can you be shooting on Sony if you're a Canon shooter? And it really got me thinking. And I came to this accusation, or I came to this epiphany, whatever you want to call it. And for a long time, I called myself a Canon shooter. But I'm not a Canon shooter. Canon doesn't pay me. I pay them to be able to shoot on their cameras. I'm a photographer, filmmaker, and a YouTuber, and cameras are really just tools. And it's all about picking whatever tool helps you do the job best. And as of right now, for the bang for the buck, for the travel, for the ability to take photos and video, and the package and the size and everything that I'm looking for in a camera, well, right now, the Sony A7 III happens to be that camera, and it is the reason why this will most likely be the first non-Canon camera that I ever buy. And I'm planning on buying one as soon as I can get my hands on it. So if you guys know anybody who's got one, especially if they're trying to sell it, let me know. But this is the camera that's gonna make me look at getting into Sony. So there you have it, guys. I hope you liked the video. If you did, definitely give it a big thumbs up. Don't just give it a thumbs down because you don't like my decision. But if you really, really hate my decision and you have to give it a thumbs down, at least give it a thumbs down twice. But thank you guys so much for checking out this video. If you have any additional questions, leave those down in the comments below. And also subscribe if you haven't already, because you're not gonna wanna miss all the videos that I have coming out on this channel, including tomorrow. I'll be dropping another video on this guy when I took it out and shot it in some low light situations, and I think you guys are really gonna like that video. It was so good that I decided, instead of taking all those shots and putting it in this video, I wanted to save it for its own video, because I think that will really help you guys as well. So definitely be on the lookout for that video tomorrow. But until next time, thank you for checking out the video, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.